Hey YouTube, and welcome to another Geek Reviews. Here's part 2 of the Shield of Baal Leviathan campaign. Today we're going to be going through the Echoes of War missions. I have the book here in front of me and I'll be showing some nice glossy pictures on the inside as I'm going through the missions. I'm going to go each mission in turn and describe what the deployments are, what all the special rules are, try and get everything as right as possible, so I will be looking down a lot. I apologise for that in advance. Hopefully you can hear me and you'll be able to understand everything that I'm going on about. But yeah, there's 6 missions to go through with a lot of special rules for them. So yeah, it's going to be a long thing of me talking and rambling on, so I do apologise in advance, but hopefully it'll give you a nice overview of the campaign and what you can expect from the actual campaign book if you buy it yourself. So right, I'm going to dive straight in here. Mission 1, which is called the Vitrias Strike. The armies in this mission are the Tyranids, of course, and Militarum Tempestus forces. But I'm sure if you want to play this through yourself and you don't have Militarum Tempestus forces, you can substitute with Imperial Guard or any other Imperial forces, but it's recommended to be Militarum Tempestus. Right, basically this encounter is the vanguard forces of the Tyranids striking basically just striking into the enemy force for the first time. But yes, right. The battlefield deployment, as you saw as I was doing this showing you of the nice classic pictures, is kind of a weird one. You basically split the table into 4 corners. 6x4 table is preferred for this. Your top right hand corner, when you're looking at it from the Tyranids table edge, is the Militarum Tempestus deployment zone. And the bottom left hand corner is the Tyranids deployment zone. Of course, you know, they have to deploy somewhere. Basically, as described, you just deploy as you normally would. You have to have at least 6 buildings within the deployment area. Like, not within the deployment area, but on the battlefield. It can be any type of buildings, but you have to have at least 6 buildings or ruins. And after you've deployed, each player takes a turn, like rolling off for deploying objective markers in one of the 6 buildings. You need at least 6 buildings because you need to have 6 objective markers, but you can have more buildings, so the more buildings you have, more cover everything there is. Objective markers, yeah, as I said, there's 6, one per of the buildings, and you have 6 of them throughout. The deployment, the Minotaur and Tempestus player deploys first in his deployment zone, then the Tyranid player deploys second anywhere within his deployment zone. Militarum and Tempestus get first turn. They get to choose whether they want first turn or not. But they can decide that they don't want first turn, and they can give it to the Tyranid player. But the Tyranid player does get the chance to seize the initiative. Each player then generates 3 City of Death tactical objectives, which will be going through on the City of Death missions on Saturday or Sunday. I'll be going through each of all the different tactical objectives in there and their specific missions. So you use those tactical objectives for this mission. It's just a little extra mission where you get to use it. At the game length, very varied game length, so it's 5 turns, 6, maybe 7. At the end, the victory conditions are, at the end of the game, it's basically whoever scored the most. Your primary objectives are, as I say, you get 3 objectives per turn, and you draw up to that amount if you don't have any, and you can discard 1 per turn. Your secondary objectives are First Blood, Line Breaker, and Slay the Warlord as normal. Special rules for this mission are City of Death objectives, Mysterious objectives, Night Fighting, and Reserves. There's also 2 special rules for this particular mission. All Gene Stealers have the Deep Strike special rule, and they do not scatter when they're arriving from Deep Strike. So you can have some fun and a little bit of shenanigans of going, right, I'm going to Deep Strike these guys over here, and since they have moved through cover, if you Deep Strike them into ruins, they automatically pass dangerous terrain tests. So that's, I think, is pretty cool, just being able to Deep Strike some Gene Stealers in, rather than having to infiltrate them or outflank them. Another one, the other special rule for this particular mission is glass buildings. All buildings in this mission have a reduced their armor value by 1. Further, all ruins and dangerous terrains in this have their model only receive all models only receive a 5+ cover. So sticking something in a ruin and expecting 4+ cover, you don't get. You get a 5+ cover instead. Bit fair because there's glass buildings, and if the opponent happens to bring fortification buildings, which are objective markers, they are also reduced by 1. Their whole point value. So a bastion would be down to armor value 13 all around. But yeah, it's a pretty cool mission. Looks fun. I will be trying to play these missions as well at my local GW, because basically the store owner is also a massive Nid fan, so he says, yep, we are playing these missions. Right. Mission number 2 is the Great Coralla. This mission is the Sisters of Baal versus the Tyranids, of course. Basically, yeah, this deployment for this one is typical Vanguard strike. So roll as you normally would. The deployment, the Adeptus Sororitas or Battle Sisters always deploy first. The Tyranid deploys seconds. Yes, they want seconds of Battle Sisters. The Tyranid player deploys second, but then must divide their army into 3 waves. So you have to be kind of right. I want this wave to come on, this wave to come on, this wave to come on. So you got to kind of plan out what you want. The player must decide one wave. Tyranid player must then select one wave. The units in this wave can deploy anywhere within the Tyranid's deployment zone or be placed in reserves, and the other waves then arrive on their subsequent whenever the wave state, which is one of the special rules which I'll get to. First turn, Tyranids get first turn, or they can choose to have first turn or let the Adeptus Sororitas have it, and then they get to seize the initiative if they don't. Yep, so normal. So Adeptus Sororitas get to go first, but Tyranids, since they are lacking all their firepower, get to go first and try and do a dent. It's fair. At the end of the game, basically you store 1 point. At the end of the game, the player who scored the most victory points is the winner. Both if equal, then it's a draw. The way you score objectives is you destroy one. You get 1 victory point for completely destroying 1 unit. So it's a kill points game, but with a slight twist. There's First Blood and Slay the Warlord, but no Line Breaker. And then there's a few other special rules. There's Night Fighting and Reserves as standard. Then there's Clawing Hulk Weapon Batteries. At the end of the enemy movement phase, the Adeptus Sororitas player can take 1 snapshot at each enemy that's arrived by a deep strike that turn. The snapshot made with the following profile, and is always considered to have line of sight. Basically, you've got a weapons battery off the battlefield that's taking a shot for you. So it's pretty cool. It's Strength 7, AP 4, Heavy 2, and ignores cover. So it's a snapshot, so 1 in 6 chance that you'll hit, but you got 2 shots, so slightly big increased chance of hitting. And it's AP 4, so monstrous creatures are still going to get their armor saves unless it's like a Toxicroon or a Malceptor, but they're not going to arrive via Deep Strike unless they're in a Spore Pod. Right. But yeah, ignores cover, so if it's going up against the Toxicroon, it's more than likely going to take, at least if it hits, it's going to more than likely take a wound off. Right. Next special rule is limited ammunition. The Adeptus Sororita player must roll a d6 at the start of each of their turns and keep track of the number each turn, adding the total from the previous turn. As soon as the total is 12 or more, the units of the Adeptus Sororitas can only take snapshots, basically because they're facing an unknowing amount of enemies. They haven't brought enough ammo to the fight. So it's kind of a thing. So potentially after 3 turns, if they roll really poorly, they can only snap fire for the rest of the game, which means any of their flamers don't work, unless for Overwatch purposes. Which is actually reading that has actually made me smile, because I know how many flamers that they can bring. So yeah, and then second and third wave. This is what I was talking about before with the splitting the Tyranid forces into thirds. At the start of the Tyranid player's first turn, they must select one of the remaining two waves of Tyranid units. All units from this wave immediately arrive from reserve in the ways that immediately arrive from reserve, and may deep strike if allowed so. All units from the third wave then must be placed in reserves and follow the normal reserve rules. So you can kind of be a bit thingy with your a bit. You can kind of be right. I want all these to be deployed on first turn. Then first turn these guys arrive to give them support, and then everything else arrives by normal rules. That's pretty cool. It sounds like it's going to be a fun mission to do. It's kind of a bit of a twist on the standard kill points mission, but hopefully it'll be fun. Right, mission 3. This is kind of a bit of a weird mission because there is no set deployment. I'll go through that as when I get to it. It's called the Shields. The Shield Tested. One army is the Militarum Tempestus, not Militarum Tempestus, Astra Militarum or Imperial Guard. One army is Tyranids, of course. Battlefield. The battlefield is split into 6 zones. So if you're on a 4x6 table, each 2-foot tile is a zone. If not, you're gonna have to kind of figure out how you're gonna split it on a 4x4 table, or if you're going bigger, you have to work out how you're gonna figure out the deployment. So yeah, quick show you what it looks like. That's how they've modelled it. So you got 6 zones to go into, and after the train has been deployed, basically you put 6 objectives markers down, as you would for the City of Death. Special rules, so you kind of need 6 buildings or 6 areas that you can go into, or ruins or something like that you can go claim. Astra Militarum player always deploys first by picking a unit either placed in reserves or running a d6, and then and deploying it fully within the corresponding zone. Basically, the Militarum Tempestus player then continues to do that for the remainder of his forces until he's fully deployed. No Tyranid forces are deployed. Are deployed at the start of the battle, and the Tyranid player must designate which units will enter on the first turn using the first wave special rule. That's on the next section. Infiltrate and scout moves aren't in play for this mission, so it affects both sides if they have scouts that they want to move up, kind of thing, after deployment. Tyranid goes first. Just know if hands or buts, because otherwise, if they didn't, the Astra Militarum would have no one to shoot at for the first turn, and literally would just be deploying. As I say, each player generates 3 Cities of Deaths objective cards at the start of the game. Mission length is variable. Victory conditions, points per victory point, as you normally would. There is First Blood and Slay the Warlord, but no line breaker because there's no lines. Basically, for your table edges, you pick one of the longer table edges each, and that's your retreat line. Mission special rules: City of Death objectives, mysterious objectives, night fighting, and reserves. First and new other special rules are: first wave, units that the Tyranid player designates are arriving on the first wave arrive on their first turn as if they were entering from reserves. Note that all around a special rule applies to these units. See below. That's the last rule that I'll be going through. Right. Before that, though, there is target the flyers immediately after the Tyranid player deploys. Each of their jump, infantry, or flying monstrous creatures, the Astra Militarum player can inflict D6 Strength 7 AP4 wounds on that unit. So that can really hurt your units if they're coming in. It's just saying Strength 7 AP4. So against stuff like harpies and crones and any other things, strikes, gargoyles, flying hive tyrants, they're all going to be hit by this, so you kind of want to be careful of how you deploy your units. It doesn't say it ignores cover, so you would get cover saves, but it doesn't say where it's coming from, so it's going to be kind of a dice roll thing of like 4+. Do you get a cover save? Yes or no? Discuss it with your opponent. Then all around us, on roll a d6 for each unit from either army that enters play from reserves, including Tyranids units that arrive from reserve on first turn. The unit must enter completely from the table edge, from the corresponding table edge. Oh no, wait, sorry. The unit must enter on the table edge of the zone corresponding of that dice roll. Deep striking units must pick a point fully within there. So if you did, so that's quite a thing. It's all random deployments. So you're not going to say right. The Astronaut player has quite a lot of stuff deployed in square 1 and 2 and 5. I'm going to, but they have hardly anything deployed in 4, 3, and 6, and the weakest forces are in 2. I'm going to hammer everything into 2 and take them all out. You can't do that. It's all fully random. So that sounds like it's going to be a fun mission. It's going to be very random. You're not going to know what's happening. It's never going to be the same mission twice. So you can play this multiple times. It's going to be completely different each time, unless you get really weird dice rolls. So this is going on to mission 4. I think this is mission 4. Yeah, mission 4. This is one of my favourite missions that I've read up so far. It's basically full air dogfight. It's called Sky War of Eros. Basically, again, Astra Militarum versus Tyranids. Battlefield, basically everything on the ground as classed as open terrain is classed as impassable terrain for this mission. I'll get on to why later. And you must have a lot of buildings, no ruins, just like proper buildings or sky shield landing pads, and that's where you can deploy your ground forces. After terrain is set up, set 1 basically, and then every building for objective marker wise is an objective. Yeah, put 1 objective on each building, and that's your thing. So the more buildings you have, the more objectives you have, basically. Gas clouds is another special thing for this mission. If a player desires, they may mark some areas as open ground as being a gas cloud terrain. If they do so, these areas terrain are being of open ground for all purposes. So you can have small little pockets of gas that are classed as open ground for all purposes for some reason. So I don't really get this rule. I'm going to read it out fully so you guys can make your own interpretation of it. If the players desire, they mark some areas of open ground as being gas cloud terrain. If they do so, these areas are treated as being open ground for all purposes except for line of sight cannot be drawn through them. Oh, so basically extra cover. Basically clouds. Okay, now I get it. So you can put clouds dotted about to give cover to the flyers. Makes sense. Astra Militarum player deploys first and deploys fully within this little area here. So basically 12 inches on from all sides, and in the centre is their deployment zone. No Tyranid players are deployed. They arrive via the first wave rule from the last mission. And infiltrators and scouts are, as you're guessing, not on. First turn, Tyranid player has first turn, because otherwise Astra Militarum player would have nothing to shoot at. Game length, standard game length variable. Victory conditions are basically if you score objective markers at the end of the game, they're all worth 1 point. And who has the most wins. Mission special rules is the fighter aces, which is what I went through in part 1. So you can have 1 flyer as your fighter ace. Mysterious objectives, reserves. Aerial war zone. Reserve units belonging to either side can enter from any table edge. So you can pick a table edge and bring them on from there. Good. First wave special rule. As I said before, the first wave that you designate comes on your first turn. It can be all your army or none of your army, or some of your army. Has to be some. Has to be, I think, about 30% still. Floating mines. In this mission, if a zooming flyer moves over a spore mine, it must take a dangerous terrain test. So it's a 1 in 6 chance of taking in a whole point, and it classes being immobilized, and they have to take a test to see if they have an engine stall and fall in the sky, which is a 1 in 6 chance, and then a 1 in 5 chance of doing that. So it's kind of can be lethal. Sky warfare. This is why all the whole ground is impassable. Basically, units other than jump pack infantry, jetpack infantry, jet bikes, flyers, skimmers, flying monstrous creatures, flying gargantuan creatures treat open ground as impassable. If they are any of the ones I just mentioned, they treat open ground as normal. In addition, flyers and skimmers, wrecks, don't get left on the ground when they die. They just get removed because you may be flying in the sky, and like if you get shot down, you fall to the earth. Makes sense. In addition, when you crash and burn a flyer, it doesn't do a crash and burn; it just explodes. Flying monstrous creatures and flying gargantuan creatures, if they need to take a grounding test, they automatically pass it. So there's no need to roll for that. So if you have a Harridan or a Flying Hive Tyrant, for instance, they take a wound and they take a grounding test, they don't need to do it, they automatically pass. Right, here we go, another one. Vanguard Strike Deployment. This is for Astra Militarum and Tyranids again, as shown. We highly recommend both. The designer's note here. Highly recommend both players read special rules for this mission and pick their armies. The environment for this mission is quite deadly, so you're kind of looking like a vehicle heavy and monstrous creature heavy. You'll know why when I explain it later. This is called the Beast of Tartarus, something along those lines. Mission 5. Deploy as you normally would. Each player rolling d6, picking the signs. Astra Militarum player deploys first, and deploys within their zone. Tyrannid player deploys second, deploying in their zone. Normal. Astra Militarum player can choose to go first or not. And then if they do decide to go first, then they get to seize the initiative. Or if they decide that the Tyrannid player goes first, then they can decide to seize the initiative for whatever shenanigan reasons why you wouldn't want to go first. At the end of the game, basically you score a victory point for each unit that's completely been destroyed. So it's a variation on kill points with a slight tweak. You'll understand why when I get through the special rules. Secondary objectives: First Blood, Line Breaker, Slay the Warlord. Mission special rules: Night Fighting and Reserve, and Deadly Radiation. Basically, both players must roll a d6 at d6 for each model in their army. So if you have a group of 30 Hormagaunts, you have to roll 30 dice. And on a 1 or a 2, the model suffers a wound, no saves of any kinds. Do not roll if a model corresponds to one of the following criteria. The model is a fortification, vehicle, monster creature, or gargantuan creature. The model is embarked in a vehicle on top, other than open top vehicles. So if you're in an open top vehicle that's you're transporting stuff in, they still will take the hits that are inside because they don't have stuff to keep them protected. Or in a building, or the model is in reserve. That's the only reasons why you wouldn't roll. So basically, this whole area is completely irradiated from shelling or for some whatever reason, and yeah, your stuff can die. So Tyranids with the big swarms of things are going to lose lots to radiation. So be careful. Bring multi-wound infantry. Bring warriors, or bring 30 termagants, so you can bring a termagon as a troop choice, and something else, and some warriors. Try and keep them alive. That's all I can really say. But yeah, that's it. It's a hammer and anvil deployment. Looks like a fun little kill points game. And then here we go, we have the last mission, which is the Wrath of Shalisa. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's got a fun deployment. I'll explain it when I get to the battlefield section. Armies on this one are Adeptus Sororitas and Tyranids. The battlefield, basically roll off to decide which table edge is the short edge and which is the long edge that the roll off. Basically, you roll off and decide which table edge is going to be the which short table edge is going to be the Adeptus Sororitas and which one is going to be the Wrath of Shalisa table edge. Explain why when I get to the Wrath of Shitty. Shitty? Yeah, I think that's shitty. Um, it's quite important. Both long table edges are the Tyranids table edge, so they get to choose. Deployment. Adeptus Sororitas go first, Tyranids go second, and must deploy within 3 inches of either table edge. So it's going to be kind of hard to fit your monstrous creatures on, so you kind of want a swarmy army that can move quickly. So Hormigons, Gargoyles that can cover the terrain gap quickly. Or of course you're going to want to have some support units in there, so probably like a Flying Hive Tyrant or something along those lines. First turn, Adeptus Sororitas goes first, unless the Tyranids can steal the initiative. Game length variable, and basically victory conditions are whoever has the most victory points at the end. At the end of the game, the Tyranid player receives 6 victory points for each native population marker that they've captured, or the Adeptus Sororitas 6 victory points for whichever one they've saved. Secondary objectives: if you fully destroy an enemy unit, you get 1 victory point. There's no other secondary rules. Then there's night fighting and reserves. Okay, now let's get onto the native population markers, because you're probably asking what are native population markers and why they're worth 6 points. Well, if you see here on the picture, you have 3 native population markers, one in the center, one 12 inches from one edge, one 12 inches from the other edge, which is really important why you have to pick which table edge is the Adeptus Sororitas and which one isn't, because go explain to now. Basically, there's 3 population markers that are the size of a large blast template. They basically move through any terrain, any units, as long as they can be fully placed on the other side, they can be placed there. And they automatically pass dangerous terrain tests, and they move around impassable terrain as a normal unit would, as if it was falling back. They can move through other units, as I say, as long as they can be placed fully on the other side. I don't think it doesn't say anywhere that has to be 1 inch away. So, yeah. In the markers are moved in the Adeptus Sororitas movement phase. It doesn't say when, so I'd assume at the end or at the beginning. Roll off and you can decide. Basically, if the marker is, then the closest unit to that marker is a Adeptus Sororitas model or part of the Imperial faction, the Adeptus Sororita player or Imperial player gets to move that in the direction they choose, whichever direction they choose to. If it happens to be a Tyranid one, they automatically fall back 6 inches away from the Tyranid, directly away. So if they're kind of at an angle, they move at an angle towards them. So basically, it's they represent this. The Tyranid models are basically going to be trying to herd these native population models markers to their table edges / towards the fighting. Basically, the way you capture one is you move it off. Well, for the Imperial player, they move it off the Adeptus Sororitas table edge, and for the Tyranid player, they move it to the opposite table edge. Basically, native population markers. Basically, they harvest because the Tyranids are trying to harvest these native population markers, so they can harvest the native population marker if the closest. Right, the native population marker is harvested and removed from play if the closest unit to the marker at the start of the Tyranid player's turn is a Tyranid unit, or is moved over by the Wrath of Shilia. I'll get to that bit in a minute. The native population marker falls back to. The native population marker automatically falls back towards the Adeptus Sororitas table edge. So basically, when the Adeptus Sororita move it, they move it towards their table edge, no matter what, because they're basically trying to fall back and escape, and the Adeptus Sororitas are trying to protect them. But as I say, the Tyranid player can kind of herd them, and if they're closer to them than any other unit at the beginning of their phase, they get to kind of go, "These are mine now. No, we've harvested them and eaten them." And then you have the Wrath of Shilia at the start of. The table edge opposite the Adeptus Sororitas edge is basically where this battle is taking place, and at the end of each game turn, so at the end of after you and your opponent have had their turn, you've rolled a d6, add 6 to it, and it moves that distance towards the Adeptus Sororitas table edge. Any models that are within that area after the new edge is moved or removed from play. No saves of any kind of any kind allowed, and if a native population marker happens to be within there or partly within there, the Tyranid player claims that, because it's been harvested by the battle that's ensuing. So basically, after a few turns, your battlefield's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So it's kind of a race against time for the Adeptus Sororitas player to try and keep their native populations alive. So you generally, unless the Tyranid player is really lucky, they could probably get at least one native population marker off, probably within 2 turns. The native population, the middle one is going to be, they're going to have to keep running that each one. It doesn't say they can't run, so it just says they move. So they're going to move 6 inches a turn, so it being in the middle of the table, it's going to take 5 turns to get to the edge, so you can possibly get 1 to 2 markers. The far end one you're probably going to lose. You can probably keep it away from the Tyranids for a while, but they're probably going to get that. So basically, the main fight is going to be of that middle population, and if you can secure that, you win the game, plus however many victory points you get from killing your opponent. And that is all. That is everything for the new Echoes of War missions. I hope you've enjoyed me rambling, and I hope it's all made sense, because I know I've been talking a lot, and as you can tell, my voice is now getting quite croaky. So I'm going to leave it here. I'm going to probably upload this tonight, so I can set this to publish tomorrow morning, so people can enjoy it. Yeah, that's me. Keep an eye out for my Geek Play series that's going to be starting soon, probably next week. I'm going to be starting Morhaime City of the Damned and Alien Isolation, maybe. Keep an eye out for the rest of the High Fleet Shield of Baal Leviathan review. They'll be popping up over the next couple of days once I get them recorded. But yeah, like and subscribe if you like this. Comment if you think I've got anything wrong, or you have any questions about anything, or it didn't quite make sense. I'll try and get back to you in the comments if I can. Yeah, comment as well if you want me to review anything else. I'll try and get around to it. But yeah, other than that, I hope you've enjoyed, and I hope to see you again.